Hello, friends. Thanks for tuning in for yet another week with yet another great guest and another great episode. Before I get into the episode, as always, please follow, subscribe, leave reviews. It really helps the podcast grow, and I appreciate you guys doing that. Additionally, you can follow me on Instagram and on Twitter. All the latest episodes, all the releases, updates, etc. Twitter, Instagram, go check it out. Now, for this week's episode, Rhona Mitra. I mean, you've probably known her from a lot of different shows and movies. She famously was the live action model for Lara Croft, which is Tomb Raider. As someone who knows nothing about video games, even I knew that. So that just goes to show you how big it was. She was on Boston Legal. She was on the movie The Last Ship and just a whole host of other shows and movies. She's been in the industry for a long time, up until kind of recently, where she decided to do a little bit of a switch in life. And I don't want to give too much away in the intro. Rhona's story is absolutely fascinating. Her journey, her career, her life is amazing. I think you guys are thoroughly going to enjoy this episode. We cover so many things from her childhood to her career in Hollywood to going to Uruguay to working with animals, trauma, what COVID has taught us as humans, or hopefully has taught us as humans. And we cover a lot. So you guys are really going to enjoy this episode. And let's just jump right into it. So without further ado, let me introduce this week's guest, Rhona Mitra. Enjoy the episode, everyone.
The Genuinely Interested Podcast.
Hey, Rhona, how you doing?
Hi, hello. Good morning, good afternoon.
Yeah, we're on different places on the planet, but we're still in daytime, so we're good.
Yeah, we're connected. We are connected.
We got it done. I'm happy we got it done.
I know, and it's amazing. I'm still in awe of these portals that we can, sort of find ways to sort of share and connect, wherever we are in the world. I'm so grateful for it. Actually, it's really been a lifesaver.
Oh, imagine if COVID would have hit 20 years ago. Imagine everyone has lockdown. You can't connect. Like I remember when I was a kid, we have family in Australia, and I would talk to my cousin for like 2 minutes, and my dad would be screaming, "You know how much that costs?" Like, you know what I mean? Like you could talk for maybe 2-3 minutes on the phone before your dad would scream at you about how expensive it was. And here we can talk 24 hours. Cost you zero, cost you nothing.
Yeah, but what did you go back and do? You see, I would have got back on my BMX or in my go-kart or gone and played with my scratch and sniff stickers or made like blue pancakes with my brother, and make up that they were actually squashed Smurfs. And I don't know.
Definitely more creative than I was.
Oh yeah, we got up some stuff, but you get on. I think that, we've just become so completely reliant on these things. And I mean, yeah, I think what would happen is that we would all just go back to sort of living like, Little House on the Prairie immediately. It would be like, right, who's got the goats? When are we getting out? It would be like, who's got the livestock? Who's got the water? Who's got the seeds? I mean, immediately we'd go into that zone and we'd be figuring out with our neighbors, like, what's up? And, how are we sharing and how are we, trading? I think we'd go automatically into that mindset, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
Instead, we're kind of obviously able to communicate, which is wonderful, but we're just waiting for somebody to press reset on the button, whatever that means or looks like.
Yeah. Well, there is kind of a movement of, I think, a lot of young people that I don't know if it's good reason, bad reason. I don't know if it's logical or not, but they kind of want to burn the whole shit down and do a restart. And especially in the West, I'm seeing it, but I think we can definitely maybe touch on that a little bit later.
Yeah, that's nihilism, I think, is what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, it just seems to be more
That's
prevalent. Maybe I think it used to be more on, I don't know, the fringe of society, the anarchists, the people that want to burn everything down. Now it seems to have gotten a little bit more of a mainstream push. At least I think and COVID was probably the accelerant because people are like, they lost their job. They're home all day. They're going crazy. Trump's in office. He's making everyone insane. And everyone's just like, all right, we want to redo.
Yeah, you know what? I would be quite chuffed if that Bunsen was lit inside of people, if there was that fire, because I think that actually can go somewhere. I actually feel that there's actually something where there's almost sort of this purgatorial state that mankind in the Western world is slightly stuck in. And it's a very dangerous place because, especially with the youth, what I see and I think what we're all feeling is actually disenchantment with what's gone before. Whole infrastructures, whether they be religious, political, economic, or otherwise, have completely dissolved and have been dissolving for years. But this moment to pause has made everybody stop and look at it and go, hang on a second, this is a house of cards. And it's always been a bloody house of cards. But now everybody is forced to look at the same picture. It's like, and you cannot turn away from it. And as a result of that, I think you've got some people who are proper deer in the headlights crew. I think you've got some people like, well, listen, like you said, the shit's half burnt anyway. Let's take the whole thing down. Let's just detonate. And then you've got the people, and this is what I've been sort of focused on. I think many people have and been prepared for and been tapping into. And I don't know if you ever read Michael Rupert's book Collapse, which was brilliant. I mean, what a prophet! What a prophet! He actually exited this life embodiment several years back. He chose to transition actually mindfully. He passed over because he knew too much. He'd seen too much, but what he shared was that the analogy of what, especially I think, we'll use the United States as an example because they are this sort of like shining beacon of where to go and where not to go. But it is the Titanic, and you have, what he said was, you have the tip of the boat like at the bottom of the ocean, and you've got half of the boat still lit up, and you've got the band still playing, and you've got the people who know how to build lifeboats, the people who want to learn how to build lifeboats. You've got your deer in the headlight crew, and you've got the dude sitting at the bar listening to the band. The fucking ship is sinking, and they're like, "Yeah, we're going down with the ship." And so you can really see those very clear pockets and groups of people who are living and existing in those states. What's scary is the deer in the headlights crew, because that's what I call a spiritual swing state. It means that they are now susceptible to anything, and whatever is the strongest tide, wherever the current pulls them, and that could be very dark or it could be very light. But and that's why what systems are in place and what beacons are shining and who's doing what and has been laying the groundwork and been forging ahead in whichever direction, because that's where those people are going to head towards. And so we've got a moment of time right now, I feel, where everyone is sort of breathing a slight sigh of relief, but that current's going to start pulling again very soon. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And while I think we're having a moment where the shipwreck, sorry to keep on laboring the nautical metaphor, but we're kind of like, there's been a moment where we're all a little bit on the beach, and we're seeing like what's been, the spoils of war as they've sort of, as they've washed up. But I think that we're going to start feeling that current pulling people back. And I'm for one concerned about the ones in the middle who are kind of apathetic and slightly anesthetized by what's taken place and how they've been betrayed and how they've been abandoned, So, yeah.
Who do you think they've been abandoned by?
I think they've been abandoned by society. I think they've been abandoned by the government. I think they've been abandoned by the school system. I think they've been abandoned by parents. The whole everything that we've been taught and everything that, I think our belief systems were based on have been just dissolving in front of us, because we realize that there is actually the community that I think we're so craving has been designed to point us in the direction of being on a salt lick of an infrastructure that feeds very few.
Yeah.
And takes care and supports very few. And so, in fact, it's Orwellian.
There's an interesting. I don't think this is a one-off. Like, this has been the biggest thing, I guess you could say, since, if I had to guess, probably World War II, way before my time, obviously. But I don't think there's ever been something like this that has just completely revamped the way we do everything, from buying things, going into places, connecting with, with our friends and family, working, communicating with one another, traveling, right? Like literally every facet of our lives has changed. And while there have been things in the past, it's never really caught on as much as this. There have been like SARS and Ebola and all these other diseases in the past, but they didn't really, I don't know, luckily they were caught early, but I don't think this is the last time. And I think people who think that, like we're past this, finally, we can go back to our lives. I think, 5, 10, 50 years, whatever I don't know how many years, but I think these things will become more prevalent because of so many things that we can get into later. Food systems, the way, we're all interconnected and we travel. So I think there is going to be a new reality. I think we're going to go back to communicating because we're a social species. We need to hug the people we love. We need to interact with other people so we don't, loneliness is a massive pandemic in a lot of places, and no one wants to be lonely. So we want to connect with other people. But there is going to be, I don't know if we're ever going to go back to the 100% to the normal that was. I think there will be some sort of a new normal integrated into our lives.
Yeah, the word normal.
Whatever normal is, right?
Well, yeah.
Status quo maybe is a better word, I guess.
Well, maybe it was sort of it was, I don't know. I think what was normal was, a delusional suicide mission.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That that we were all on as a species, and I for one, when viruses are part of our family. Mm-hmm. So if we're talking about community and understanding of what has been and what will be here and what is not going anywhere, they are viruses, the same way that fungi and bacteria and all of these other, I suppose, things that we have, we do identify as being the enemy, but ultimately they're part of our family, and they'll always be here. And I think that the way that we were existing and the way we were consuming and our state of mind or mindlessness was a disease that was actually abnormal. Our behavior was completely abnormal because we are part of a whole family that works symbiotically. And when it's not in harmony, it derails. And that's where we were going. And that's still where we're going if we're not bloody careful. And this is what's hanging in the balance right now. And that's why, I truly believe we were stopped in our tracks for a very bloody good reason. And whatever your theories are on that, whether that was divine intervention or whether or not it's, we're going through the Kali Yuga, which was, a Hindu belief system that this was a prophesized time, that through 2020 to 2025, these are the dark ages. And this is where we as a species get to realign our relationship with. The theories go on and on, but I think that we could all agree that our behavior as a species who is or is not coexisting with a myriad of other species, whether it be plants, whether it be animals, whether it be, I mean, it's the fungi, whether it be viruses, is that we have isolated ourselves as being unique and superior. And that's a malady. That's a sickness.
Yeah.
You know, that's narcissism. It's a very malignant form of, you know, psychological sort of behavior that, you know, obviously can only lead in one direction, which is obviously towards the sixth great extinction. And the only species that will actually end up buggering off will be us. You know, and so you know, the back to normal thing is, and I am not a throw the baby out with the bathwater champion. I'm really not. I'm not for, hey, listen, man, let's all go and live off grid and, you know, get furry armpits and sort of fly our flags and sort of say that everybody's vegan and needs to be. And it's, first of all, it's not realistic. I also think it's overly righteous. I've seen it in effect, and it works in microcosms. It's not something you can scale. And also it's not something that you can interweave with where we've come from. And also there's so many amazing magical things that as human beings we have created that we can celebrate. You know, we don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So why we cannot take pause and mindfully, you know, select and edit. You know, this is about building an editing suite and mindfully, collectively having conversations within our different cultures and countries. It can't be a global en masse, you know, tarring of brush. You know, every country has its own ecosystems and its own cultural, you know, issues and habits, and everything has to be looked at as under a microscope individually. But this is a time for selecting mindfully how we proceed with intelligent conversation and how we interweave an old way of being that has benefited us with a new way, which is ultimately going back to, you know, an old system way of being, which is permaculture, fundamentally how we exist as a permanent culture in symbiosis with our universe.
Very, very interesting. Well, maybe this was just China's way of doing all this in a very altruistic way. The government there they foresaw this. They were like, all right, we need to hit a reset. we're just doing this for the good of the planet.
Yeah,
Probably not.
Because let's just face it just seems like there's so much consideration coming from that corner of the world. I'm not going to go down that route particularly, but I don't. No. Let's just say I don't think this was an oops daisy.
Yeah, no, definitely, it definitely was not. So let's go back. Maybe kind of. So where were you born? Let's go back. We went into the hard stuff right away. I wanted to build up to it, but we'll get back to it later.
Listen, man, it is the thing. Here's the thing: is like, you know, the elephant's in the bloody room, as far as I can see, and she is like in full glitter, sparkle, sequin, saying, "I am here." Like, I don't know. I find it quite hard to avoid her, and I'm all right acknowledging her out the gate. But yeah, we can go back.
Yeah, that's the beauty of this. There's no format. It's not like, right, like if you go on like I don't know, a Tonight Show, if you go wherever, there's a format. Here, there's no format. Here, it's just free flow conversation, and whatever happens to come to the surface, that's what comes to the surface.
That's life, right?
Yeah, it is.
We're just freestyling.
Exactly. So you were born up in England, right?
I was born in London, yeah.
Born in London.
Yeah.
And then you lived there your whole life?
I was born in London. My dad's actually, he's part Indian, part English. So his father was originally from Bengal, from Calcutta.
Yeah.
And he came over to England, turn of the 1900s. So, and grew up in Birmingham, which I don't know if you know much about that. It's possibly one of the most racist parts of England.
Birmingham, okay.
Yeah. Birmingham, England, not Birmingham, Alabama.
Yeah. Which is, you know, also kind of.
Yeah. But it's a different sort of, it's different, but it's the same in as far as its prejudice. And it was a very, very difficult time to be a man of color and meet my grandmother, who's English. She's passed on. And then for my father, who now is in his mid to late 80s, Victorian, growing up with a lot of prejudice and racism. And so, we received the ramifications of what that was like growing up for him. You don't understand that until you get older as to what makes your parents, right? But the story unfolds. And so that was his roots. And then my ma was Irish. So I'm sort of a posh pleb. That's what she used to call me.
Posh pleb?
Well, they attempted to send me to sort of some decent schools. I was raised by nuns in convents from age 9 till 14 for my sins.
How was that? What sins were you committing that you had to go get taught by nuns?
Probably all of them. They say that it's an expression for my sins. I don't know. You figure out what you might have done in a past life to have deserved that.
Yeah.
That was very much part of what my mum, was she grew up with that. She was raised by nuns, and, apparently the education is supposed to be brilliant. So, it actually went at age 4 in a school in London, and it was all nuns, all girls school.
All girls, yeah.
And then at age 9, I actually asked to be sent to boarding school. So, it wasn't the easiest of childhoods. I don't need to go into a deep sort of Freudian web of the mess of it all. I think we all have our stories from childhood, but it was particularly abnormal in as far as both my parents were pretty AWOL. My dad was definitely AWOL. He was a very prolific surgeon and got very much caught up in the sort of life of what it was to be a doctor who was very revered in the 80s, and so there was a lot of ego trappings with that. And unfortunately, my poor ma, I actually, we lost her to addiction, no, it's a lesson, this is a sort of magical thing about this life is that, through the pain of going through that journey as the child of or the family member of, you're so close to it. It's so tapped into our IV systems, right? I call it the second umbilical cord, that I think a lot of our life journey is about actually transcending and breaking that chain, and seeing where the lessons are. So she didn't make it through in this lifetime, so I get to carry the torch.
Yeah. And how's your relationship with your dad nowadays?
Enough
said.
You see, you know what? I was chatting the other day because obviously he's
what kind of surgeon was he? Sorry for interrupting.
Ear, nose, and throat.
Okay.
I like this. I like the tale of the scorpion and the frog.
Okay.
Do you know that?
No, please tell. I don't.
You don't know the story of the scorpion? Well, they should say it all, and then I should probably leave it there. But it's a fable, and there's a frog, and he's on the riverbank, and the scorpion needs to get across the river, and he says to the frog, "Please, can you give me a ride across the river? I need to get to the other side." And the frog says, "I can't give you a ride to the other side." He said, "But why not?" He said, "Because halfway through, I'll be swimming and you'll sting me and then we'll probably both drown." And the scorpion says, "Well, why on earth would I do that?" He said, "Because it wouldn't behoove us if we both drowned." And he said, "Oh gosh, okay then, get on my back." Swimming along, lo and behold, halfway through, the scorpion gets his tail out and stings the frog. And they both start sinking. And the frog says, "Why on earth would you do that? And now we're both sinking." And he said, "Well, of course, it's my nature. I'm a scorpion."
Yeah, I do. So, I do know it. I do know it. Yes.
Yeah.
By the way, you should be reading like children's books. That was like, that was so calming. That was like a ASMR type video. That was amazing.
Oh, well, that's better. People usually.
That was great.
People usually say that I could get a second job doing some sort of like, I don't know, adult porn or something. So I'll take
well, I mean, this is the complete opposite, but yeah, like just a children's book.
I'll take that. Yeah.
Is there any other version of porn, if not adult porn?
I don't want to go down that route, actually. I don't think
I've only heard of one version, but I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be, but then as we have this internet situation, I don't know. I think it might have veered into far too many different avenues. I wouldn't know, Roy.
No, I wouldn't either.
No, not my cup of tea.
No, it shouldn't be anyone's cup of tea.
Excuse me while I have a sip of water.
Yeah, go ahead. So I guess at what stage did you know you wanted to be an actress?
If I'm going to be absolutely frank with you, I ended up going to drama school instead of rehab.
Okay.
So
how did that work out?
Not
as far as the results, but why school instead of rehab?
I think this was part of some sort of divine intervention, and it's something that I used to feel there was some sort of shame around admitting that. Mm-hmm. And I've long since removed that veil of shame, because I think it's really important to talk about, because I think that there's a lot of people who've gone through and are going through a similar journey that I went through as a child. I saw what my parents did, and I saw what my mum did, and little girls, you do what mummy does, and I didn't know any other way. And it was also a coping mechanism for me. I grew up in London during the 80s. It was rave generation just started, music scene had just started. I was out there with all of the first new DJs, Paul Oakenfold, Sasha, Digweed, Ministry of Sound was opening. We were literally field hopping, going from one rave to the next, when this is before even cell phones existed. It was all word of mouth, and it was a pulse. But the point is it was a tribe for me. It was a family. We belonged. And this was a kind of the common feeling of a lot of people who move into that sort of world, which at that particular point, there was actually something quite wholesome about it when it started, because there was very much a family, tribe, community feeling. But, like all good things, when abused, they go sour, and the problem is with that world is ultimately its baseline is darkness. Yeah. And it's run by the gremlins, as I say. And they love teenagers, they love the emotional vulnerability of children who are filled with, anger, resentment. I was really pissed off with God. I was really resentful towards him. I was embarrassed. I was humiliated. I was told that if I prayed to this dude in the sky that I couldn't see and taste and touch, that he was gonna fix my mom. He was gonna make things right, And as a kid, what all you really want is your parents to be okay. Yeah. It's just, it's something that I don't have kids for a very specific reason, and it's because I don't want to pass on the trauma. But, everybody sort of thinks it's the right school, or it's the right outfit, or it's if I get her these trainers or buy this car. That's another form of abuse as far as I'm concerned. It's, as a kid, you want your parents to be well. You want your parents to be whole. They're your North Pole. And when that's not set, if that North Pole isn't set, you only need one of them. You only need one parent to be taking care of themselves and be on track. I really believe that. And because they were both AWOL, I didn't have anywhere to go but to the gremlins. They were like, we got you, yeah. And with that became, they were dressed up for me in what seemed like family, and, I went hard and fast down a road, and I'm very, 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 very lucky I didn't die, but something grabbed me, and I can only imagine it's my angels, by the scruff of my neck when I was at a really hardcore bottom. And oddly enough, I had met Judi Dench.
That's odd. Yeah.
Her daughter went to the very first convent I was at. And I remember, because we would never get picked up from school, me and my brother, we were at different schools, but we were always the last kid on the wall. And I don't know if you've ever experienced that. You get on with it as a kid and you find a way, but it's one of the most awful feelings, because you're terrified. You realize that everyone's getting picked up and you don't know where you're going to go. And we ended up memorizing the cab number, a taxi cab number that my dad used to use. This is at age 5.
Oh, wow.
And I would run down to these red telephone boxes and do a kind of a collect call. And we would go to this woman who actually ended up sort of raising us, who was like my dad's secretary. But anyway, at one point, Judi Dench waltzes up to me and she said, "Hello, little girl," in her amazing voice. And she had that raspy, delicious sort of blanket of a voice. And she said, "Where's your mummy and daddy?" And I said, "They're coming." And she said, "Are they? Are you going to be okay?" I said, "Yes, yes, yes." And you cover it up and you said, "Absolutely fine." And you kick your little brown shoes with your little white socks. But I remember that there was something about the core of the strength of this woman and her warmth. And I said to her daughter, Finty, the next day, I remember saying, "Who is your mummy?" And she told me she was an actress. And I said, "Well, when I grow up, I'm going to be just like her." And I didn't even know what being an actress was.
Yeah.
All I knew was that this lioness of a woman that I didn't know, and I didn't have that in my life, created such an impact in my heart and in my being that I just wanted whatever that magic was that she had. It was delicious and comforting and whole. And so I can't remember who mentioned it to me, but they said that she had a drama school, which was close to my dad's house.
Mm-hmm.
And that they were holding auditions. And so my brother at the time had gone to graphic novels. He was addicted. He was 18 months older than me. His addiction was graphic novels. And he had written out a passage from V for Vendetta. And it was about it was a monologue that she finds wrapped up in a piece of toilet paper in a wall. And it's about a moment where all the gays are rounded up and put in prisons in the next war.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a love letter. It's essentially a love letter from one woman to her lover. And I thought it was the most beautiful piece of writing. And so I waddled into this drama school, which was Judi Dench's, and I recited this monologue and I went in, and the rest is history.
What age is that?
17.
17. Wow. So wait, but at that point you had some prior experience, like you went to the school, you were nothing?
No.
Just
no
off the street?
Yeah, straight out of the nightclubs, straight off the streets.
Wow.
Into and you know what, it was absolutely you know what it gave me was structure.
Mm-hmm.
Every single day I had to turn up, and if you didn't turn up, they kicked you out. You had 3 chances. And I didn't know what that was like. We had a feral upbringing. There was no one ever at home. We would cook for ourselves. I was raising my brothers. I was cooking for my brothers. There was no one there. My mum was in and out of mental hospitals. My mum was being given electric shock treatment. She was on every pill under the sun. We didn't have a mum or dad. We were like feral kids running around in Converse and saris. For some reason, I kept on being given saris because of my Indian heritage, but I was always covered in mud, cooking for both my brothers. And then, it was just sort of this feral life. And so when I was given this structure, which is what all children really want, it's what all children want, it's what all animals want, it's what we actually all crave because it keeps us safe. Mm-hmm. The second I got that, I was like a pig in muck. I didn't care about it. It wasn't the acting. I was like, actually, I thought actors were actually sort of a little bit just self-indulgent. So I didn't really enjoy that too much.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed the structure. I loved showing up somewhere. And I loved the fact that somebody actually cared that I showed up, So
you were looking for a community.
Looking for community.
Yeah. And that's something I think, especially now in COVID times, I think we can all relate. There's so many people that are just home by themselves, just looking to find communities. I mean, there are a lot of online communities. I'm sure it's helped people, but you need that skin to skin. You need to feel like that you can relate to other people and touch them and see them. It's not the same.
Yes. I kind of resent that, but you're absolutely right.
Why do you resent it?
Because I'm mildly misanthropic.
I see.
And in case you hadn't noticed, I spend most of my life with animals, and so
that's a fellow being. It's a sentient being. It's not that different.
No. It's not. But
it's sometimes better.
Oh, it's undoubtedly. But this actual essential need for human community. It's the same. Horses need horses. They're herd animals, Elephants need elephants. Humans, and this is where I've become a little bit stubborn. I'm like, gosh darn it, I've had to learn it. I've had to learn the hard way because, as you know, I sort of ejected myself into the wilderness with just animals. And, what I have come to realize is, we do need each other to a certain extent, and how it is that we work with each other, I think is what we're all coming to cut terms with now, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yes, in those earlier years, it was an amazing thing because you realize as kids, as people, we thrive when we are working together on things. Working in things in isolation doesn't work. This whole fight or flight, I can do it alone. And I think a lot of us fly that flag. I think so many of us quietly fly that. I've got this. I can do it alone. And not asking for help is so dangerous, and it's so lonely, and it's so isolating, and it's so exhausting. And you burn out. And there's a certain point where I think that there's a little person inside of all of us that says, no, help. I need help. And it's a really beautiful place to be.
Mm-hmm. So 17, you go in, nail the audition. And then how fast or slow do things start to evolve where you are getting like actual roles?
Well, it was a 3-year drama course and I got bored after a year. So I literally call. I'm not fanning around pretending to be an amoeba. We did these classes where you really do. You pretend to be an amoeba for 4 hours and you assume an identity, which is really fun. But I didn't think it had anything
sounds
to do
fun, yeah.
Yeah, but it's got nothing to do with the price of fish, really. Except for it sort of does if you've got the time to meditate in life. But I was very much I wanted to get on. I'd already lived quite a big life. From the age of 14 to 17, I'd done a lot. I'd seen a lot. And so I wasn't really up for 3 more years of just sort of waiting for the cattle call. And with drama school, you have to wait.
Yeah.
You get to this point where you all stand on stage at the end of the 3 years and you wait for an agent to pick you. And I was like, sod that for a game of fish. I'm going to go straight to an agent. So I knocked on an agent's door and I basically got her to sign me. And she was a very big agent.
Really?
Yeah, she thought the whole thing was so sort of absurd because it's not how you do things. But I didn't really know how you did things. I just said, look.
I fucking love that. I love that. Because that's how, like, if you look at the most successful entrepreneurs, that's how they do it as well. It's like they just go and get what they want. They're like, okay, that's how it's supposed to do it. I don't care. I'm just going to go and try. And a lot of them end up making it.
Yeah, you know what? I just wanted to move and grow and learn. I don't know about you, but for me, it's like, it's a hunger, to grow and play and learn. And I think also from the life that I'd come from before, I felt, a real sense of awareness of the fact that there was a life to live, even though I was so young to come out of that darkness, there was a real sense of like, let's get on, I don't want to waste time. I'm kind of hungry for this. And I think she found that quite infectious. And so she sent me out on auditions and she said the worst thing that can happen, they call it hip pocketing. So they don't actually sign you, they hip pocket you. And I got 2 jobs in the space of 2 weeks. And so one of my first jobs was shooting in Tunisia. And I was playing. Yeah, I woke up in. Well, yes, but it's not for this industry. And actually, it was perfect for my personality type because I was running away with the circus, number one.
Okay.
And, waking up in locations. We were shooting at the bottom of Tunisia in a place called Tazur, which is where they shot Star Wars, which is just deserts. Like, and you wake up with the mosques and the singing and these smells. And I don't know if you've ever been in Morocco or Tunisia or anywhere down there in the desert, but it's so intoxicatingly beautiful when you see the sunrise and the sunset. And I remember seeing the tracks laid for the set. I remember seeing gaffers and grips and sound guides and what I call like all the doozer constructors. I use a lot of Jim Henson analogies. I'm a big Muppet puppet fan. So I was like, oh, those are the doozer constructors. We're the Fraggles and the producers are the Gorgs. Right. So and I remember just watching them all lay up these sets and I was holding my script And I think I was listening to the soundtrack. I think it was a Vangelis soundtrack.
Mhm.
And I just was so connected to the magic of how the seed of the thoughts in somebody's mind, the creative seed that had gone onto this piece of paper that I was reading that had created these characters were now being constructed in front of me.
Mhm.
And the whole architecture and belonging to this magnificent sort of orchestra was the most divine feeling of being welcomed into what I thought was the greatest family on earth. And I still to this day, and it's the reason why I am reluctant to let go of it, because if you let go of that feeling, of that connection to that family and that opportunity to create from that little seed with all these amazing people who all do their part, and you're just one tiny little part in this extraordinary cog, then you need to leave, or you've turned into something else. The narcissist monster has got you. But I still get that every single time I walk on a set, no matter what it is, which is like, this is magic.
Yeah.
And so I was hooked. It's very hard to go anywhere else after you've experienced that.
Yeah. I mean, that's amazing that you were able to see that at such a young age. Because I mean, essentially, I mean, that's what separates us from animals, right? That's essentially what makes humans human. The fact that you can take an idea and then we have the imagination, we can make that into an actual tangible product or service or movie or a feeling. Like, you can make things just out of your head. Like, out of your head comes out these amazing things, right? The best books, the best food you've eaten, the most amazing architecture you've seen, right? The most beautiful art you've ever seen. Everything, planes, wheels, all from a seed in someone's mind that they were like, I should make this. I can create this beautiful thing and people will admire it
And share it.
and share it. Yeah, it's
And
amazing.
enjoy it. And it has an onward journey, and it infects and impacts and has the ability to, light up or, affect millions and millions of people, if the instrument is used mindfully, or not. There's mindless entertainment, or
Yeah.
there's mindless things that we make also, and you're like, okay, a dude made that, and that's kind of cool, but what's the point? And I don't know about you, but I've definitely now reached a juncture where it's let's see what I've learned and what we've all learned actually collectively, and what vehicles we can employ and use to actually sort of like, maybe if it's sneaking carrots into the kids' food through the vehicle, or if it's really being mindful about the fact that how powerful and brilliant we actually are as architects and innovators, and whether it be through talking about sustainable initiatives or innovation, or whether it's creative content through entertainment or whatever it is. But now I think we're at that juncture. And I don't mean being holier than thou. I don't mean that we have to be pious and righteous. I think I know this is kind of slightly going off piste again, but I do think that the pendulum has swung into a very fear-based kind of place about like, oh, we can't talk about this, we can't talk about that. We have to hire like this, and we have to, like, you can't say this, you can't do that. I think it'll find its medium again, but I think ultimately the place we're arriving at is realizing that we've created a lot of incredible things, and this is the beauty and the incredible, unique, expression of mankind, is that these are our gifts, and how are we utilizing them now?
Yeah.
So, but there's something very, very, very basic about, I think, that with what all of us do, whether you're going back into the office and working as a team with people, I think there's a level of, I hope, and I know we use this word so much, but I hope there is a gratitude and awareness that had dissolved in a way, for the fact we get to collaborate. The way humans collaborate together when we do it well is extraordinary.
Yep. Yeah. I 100% agree with you. So you get this part in Tunisia, and then you get a couple of other parts, and then is there a point where you are in it and you're almost like looking from the outside in, where you're not believing, hey, wait a minute, like this little thing that I thought would be maybe a little thing is now this massive thing. I'm in big roles. I'm getting a lot of attention. Like, at what point do you start to understand, like, this is, I mean, again, maybe you thought from the onset it would be big, but usually people, I think, don't think that. So is there a point where you realized, hey, this is actually bigger than I thought it was going to be?
Nope.
Well, that's clears that.
There was I after that job, I buggered off to Mexico for 3 months and was like, I'm going off to go and sleep. I'm going to go off and like save turtles and sleep on beaches and live life and learn about different cultures. You know,
Did you always love animals?
Yeah. I think I was going to be. I really wanted to be a vet. I think.
Same.
You know, yeah. Oh, you did too?
When I was a kid, yeah, I would always tell my parents, I'm going to be a vet. That didn't turn out right.
Yeah, it was a vet or an artist. I mean, I think that I sort of, you know, horses definitely. It's one part of the journey which actually kind of correlates to where I'm at now. But horses actually were a big part of saving my sanity when I was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I asked to go to boarding school, they had horses there, and they grounded me in a way which I wasn't aware of then, but I understand now. So, interestingly, horses and the choir, choral music, which is again tribal. It's about, and also sound healing. It's about that unified, you know, collective, you know, being part of something that creates a whole. And then, you know, you're singing 6-part harmony, Benjamin Britten's, and I was an absolutely out of control 12-year-old, but
yeah.
There I was, you know, touring around Europe, singing with a choir that was, it was a really sort of dichotomous, weird thing, but it makes sense to me now. But no, I didn't because I felt like I was a stowaway on a very big ship. I didn't feel like, because, you know, I think that you have these thespians who all went to RADA and Lambda, and there was definitely in England, there is a world which revolves around a kind of snobbery in that,
Mm-hmm.
in the theatre world. And I was very much made to feel that I was not part of that. And not only that, at that particular juncture, being part Indian was also, what I was called was too exotic.
Really?
I would get back casting information that the constant feedback was too exotic, too exotic. And so here's where things went, they took an interesting turn. And you probably know about this, I would imagine, my relationship with computer games.
No.
You don't?
Oh, with Lara Croft, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So my brothers were addicted, as was the rest of the world. They were just, everybody was playing Tomb Raider. Everybody. And they said, you must sit down and watch this. You know, you'll love her. She's the coolest, and blah, blah, blah. And there had been no other female iconic computer game characters to that point at all. There was Tank Girl, who was in graphic novels, but that was it. And I loved Tank Girl. Absolutely based myself on her, dressed like her, shaved my hair like her. I thought she was literally the bomb. And then I saw Lara Croft, and I genuinely connected to her as a role model, as a young girl. Her qualities, her background, her attitude, what she represented, I just thought she was the cat's pajamas. And I didn't have a female role model. And so I sort of just connected with her in a very immediate way. And I said to my agent at the time, I have a feeling they're going to make a film out of this. This is way before they made the film. I said, please keep your eye on it. I just have a feeling they're going to make a film out of this. And I would love an opportunity to play her. And
Nostradamus.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I think I was a little girl with like a dog with a bone.
Yeah.
But the very next week, she calls me up and she said, "This is the strangest thing, but they're actually looking for somebody to record an album with Dave Stewart from Eurythmics. And they need somebody to pick who can be motion captured for the game. So basically, they need a real life Lara Croft." So I went and met with the people at IDOS, the people at Core, and with Dave Stewart, and I got hired for the job. And so I went down this really bizarre avenue for 2 years of co-writing an album with Dave. So I wrote all the lyrics for the album in character. We recorded it on Paul Allen's yacht going up the Amazon.
Okay, it's not bad.
This is at age of 19. And in Jamaica and to various different places. And ultimately, that then became a thing which confused a lot of casting directors in England. They said, well, we don't know what you are, if you're a computer game character, if you're a singer, or whereas in America, it was entirely celebrated. And if it was today, everyone would be, that's amazing because you can cross all parameters. But in England, I think that they found it cheapened some part of whatever being an actress meant. And
really?
So, yeah, definitely. And, where I stepped away from it and I actually got myself released from the contract was when they were taking her down a road where they wanted to sexualize her too much. And I was very, 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 very protective over her identity and her integrity. And I was contracted to do a certain amount of the sort of lads mag stuff, and I did one, and I regret doing it, but I was contracted, and I think it was, I can't remember which one it was now, either Esquire or GQ, and they sort of over amplified the boob thing, and they did all of that, and it because it was so huge, I got very caught up with her identity, and so for a very long time I was just Lara Croft to a lot of people, and it took me a very long time to shake that. So then I met my manager who took me over to the United States, and I didn't stop working after that. I got taken over to the States.
Yeah.
And they were like, if they don't want you, we'll have you. You'll work just fine over here. And that's what happened. I went to LA at 24, and actually I went younger. I went to do ADR green screen for something, and then I never came back.
How different is Hollywood from everything you've known back home?
Well, Hollywood then was very different to Hollywood now.
Okay.
And I could write a book.
You should write a book.
Well, I might get a lot of people in a lot of trouble.
That'll sell a lot of copies then.
I don't, that's not my jam. It's not my jam. I was there at the very, very, when whatever has become the essence or the genesis of the Me Too movement, I was there in the middle of it, and I saw the best and worst of it. And I've observed it, and I've observed a lot of the girls that I knew, that I was around and I saw, and I think there's absolutely a valid place for calling out a certain level of behavior that absolutely needs to be acknowledged. But I can also see where, for me, I've spent a lot of time in Africa where the word rape doesn't even exist. And this is not diminishing anybody's relationship with any kind of abuse, because I have been through all shades of it. What I like to personally focus on is what you choose to do with that story and how you transform it into a different level of power for yourself. It definitely should be acknowledged, but I don't think that pausing and pointing fingers and calling out an almighty witch hunt is going to serve anything. I think it should be acknowledged. I think the line in the sand needs to be drawn. But I think as women, what I have learned through my time, especially this is what Hollywood taught me with its misogyny, which is rife, is what you choose to do with that. And I'm not interested in being a victim. Yeah, it's difficult. And you've got to find a very serious toolkit. But I have lent on women who have been examples of transformation and evolving through that journey. It's not easy, but you do it, and that's the sort of path that I'm on, which is, what are we doing with this, and how are we forging a new path so other women can see that there's a way forward, and men. This is not unique one way or the other. And the abuse, which is not talked about, is it's both women's life in Hollywood. It's all over the place. But, I'm more interested in what are you doing about that, as opposed to, I suppose, sitting on a book, writing a story, and blaming people. I'd much rather get on and use that as empowerment.
Yeah. No, it's interesting that you mentioned Africa, could be the Middle East. There's a lot of other countries, even, there's, I don't know, Central America, right? I think there's this notion that, and I'm seeing this more with certain groups, younger groups, that the US or the West, these imperialistic states with air quotes, are the worst in the world when it comes to all these different things, right? And while I'm not saying they're great, they are, when human rights are concerned, they're better than the overwhelming majority of the world. Because you go to a lot of countries and, women don't exactly have rights. Like you said, rape is not even a word. You can do a lot. There's a lot of progress to be made in a lot of countries. And if you're in the US, like, it's not perfect, right? But at least justice can be served, and it does get served a lot of the time. Like I said, there's still work to do, but it's not perfect. But it is a hell of a lot better than the majority of the other countries when it comes to some of the basic human rights that we have.
I completely agree with that, in as far as that it is definitely carrying that torch, and therefore it sets an example. What I don't champion is an over abuse of the narrative. I think it needs to be properly looked at, dissected, and investigated case by case. Unfortunately, what happens is that there can be. I think there's a moment where it's abused, and I think that some people are having a moment in the sun with it. I think that that's being recognized more, but you're absolutely right that there are laws being implemented now. I think there was one that was passed last month called Jennifer's Law, and it recognizes psychological manipulation, abuse, and trauma. And it's a very specific type of malignant abuse. It's malignant covert abuse, which is far more damaging than even physical abuse, because it goes unseen. And it's actually what it does to the human psyche, and what it does to a human being, which is it's very toxic. And it's being looked at, and it's being a law just passed. So, I think we have to be careful, because I'm very focused on solution. I'm very focused on letting people fight the fight if they want to, if that's their cross to bear. But I feel that if you get out the other side of something, which I have, whether it be addiction, whether it be, yes, we could call it abuse, all the different shades of it. For me, that's not the badge I want to wear and own. I definitely want to acknowledge it, but the path that I've chosen to tread down is to find other people, and whether it be the godfathers or the godmothers or the torchbearers who are and have been forging a way where we're actually moving forward with our tenacity of spirit, and actually supporting each other in our forward movement, and holding safe spaces where people can actually share, whether it be through talking. And what does it mean? What are our modalities? What have we got set in place for this whole generation of children who are going to be experiencing en masse global trauma? We're talking PTSD, we're talking anxiety, we're talking drug addiction, we're talking alcoholism, we're talking about domestic violence. Domestic violence that is still not being talked about. A kid goes to school and it's got, unless it's got a bruise on its eye, that's not violence. Neglect, not being fed, being, whatever it is, all of these different violations that go on. Yes, they need to be recognized, but I'm interested what systems we have in place to support each other on the other side. And I that's the sort of track that, if we're going to sort of fast forward a bit, because I don't, the Hollywood story is part of it. And I often wondered why I was in it, because I really, 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 I loved being with the grips, and I loved being on the sets. And I loved, like, my best mates are always the beardy dudes who are, I have a crack a beer with at the end of the day. Well, I don't anymore because I don't drink, but, and that was part of that was the joy
Have
for
a
me.
kombucha.
Yeah, that's it. You got me. A little bit of CBD and kombucha, rock and roll.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the bit I focus on. But for all of us, it's like, I think our 20s and our teens are a response to a response to our childhood. So I don't know if you've ever read the work of Bruce Lipton, but he wrote an incredible book called The Biology of Belief. And it's about the blueprint of basically what happens to you from in utero to age 7. So the whole of our lives, we're responding to that 7 years of fundamental kind of, like, whether it's true, it could be a perfect childhood, but for the most part, it's the imprints our parents, impose upon us. And ultimately then we have to forgive them for their choices, because the same happened to them. And so, the trail goes back to ancestral sort of, whether you want to call it damage or lessons, it's up to you. I prefer lessons. Otherwise you're a victim to that too. But it gets to the certain point where you go, okay, now I can stop and look at the sort of the mountain that I've climbed. And usually that happens around mid to late 20s. Just as you're about to hit 30, you go into this moment of, like, what the fuck?
Yep.
Who have I been? What has made me? What's this cartoon that I've been sort of like bumbling through? Because ultimately, whether you're in the film industry, or whether you're a photographer, or whether you're a writer, or you're a janitor, it's all a cartoon. It's a stage, right? Yep. And there's your little soul. There's the soul version of you. There's your real, true soul, who you came into the world with, saying, hey, what about me? What about me? What about me? Because ultimately our ego's been driving the train otherwise. And when I say ego, it's just our false cover, dude, whoever your cover story was. Yeah, I had a cover story. Didn't you have a cover story for years? My whole 20s was a cover story.
Looking back, I don't even know if I would be friends with 23-year-old me. I was just, I look back and I'm like, who was that person? And not that I was bad, but I was just different, extremely different than I am now. And like, I actually, what you were saying earlier about childhood, I had David Crow on, who's an author, last week, and he had an amazing quote, which was, childhood is a city you never leave. And I thought that was, like, very pertinent to what you were saying.
Childhood is a city you never leave. I don't know I think you'd try to leave the city and just build a little cottage inside of yourself.
Well, what I thought was, there's always something, right? Like, even you hear people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and they will talk about something in their childhood, right? Something that steered them in a certain direction, something that made them who they are today. It doesn't have to be your whole existence, but there's something there that kind of created the human you are today.
Oh God, all of it. It's the culmination of all the events. It's such a university that is part of every little stick, is part of the structure that is building the cathedral that's you. And ultimately, I think what happens is there's the point where you realize that you're the architect. You can be the architect. Up until a certain point, everybody else has been laying the bricks for us. Whether it's your parents, your school system, Big Brother, or whatever. It's like, hang on a second, I didn't put that window in there. These floorboards are rubbish. The plumbing's crap. And you get the opportunity or not. And this is where I find human beings to be fascinating. And this is what I'm attracted to and drawn to, and have been, in the last, I think, probably nearly 10, 15 years now, is a realization that I've been looking for people in their purpose. And that's, I don't mean people who are properly look, there are what I call the lighthouses. They are the Buckminster Fullers, they are the Bill Mollisons, they are the Wangari Maathais, they are God. I mean, there's so many godfathers who are out there who've been walking the walk and living it, that we can look to. Expression. It's like find the others, find your others, find your bigger family. And I think it's, for me, what's interesting is people who actually acknowledge that we fucked up, and it's okay, and it's ugly. It's not a pretty journey, and we have to kind of stand here with our pants down for a while it's a bit humiliating. And there was a moment where that happened for me when it was a point that I don't want to get too far into, but I became very sick around 2015. And this was a catalyst for 2011. And this is a catalyst for a lot of change for me, because I had slowly been working on projects where I realized that there was a sort of sickness within the industry where it was giving permission for narcissism to run amok.
Mm-hmm.
And that poison for me is something that is too close to the bone for me, because I was raised with it. And so it was making me very unwell, and unwell in a soul way. But then I actually did become very sick. I got hit with an autoimmune disorder, and I was tested for very early symptoms of MS, and this was around 2011.
Oh, wow.
And what it meant was I had to sort of disappear. I disappeared to the mountains for 2 years, and I went and lived in a cabin in the woods in the Santa Monica Mountains. And I had to completely change my environment. I had to clean out all chemicals. I had to change my diet. But at that particular moment, what I realized was the infrastructure, the support system, whether it be the medical world, even friendships, or the life that I had made or had made me, it could give me nothing in that moment. What healing meant and what my sickness at that time meant, what meant that I had to dig into a place which I had probably forgotten, which I had definitely forgotten, which was about my relationship with the natural world. And I went on a journey for 2 years of reconnecting with plant medicine and animal medicine, all through internet, then through talking to friends, the global community through this, people who had experienced similar kind of situation. And that's where this kind of incredible global portal came into effect for me. And it was probably the most isolating and lonely and terrifying 2 years of my life. But ultimately, on the other side of it, I made a promise to myself that I was going to pay it forward the second I got out and got on the other side. The level of awareness for what it meant to have a functioning body and a functioning brain was so it was so powerful. And without saying, I don't want to sound like a sort of a bit of a wanker, but it really was, one of those, the only thing to do with this is find out a way that I can give this back somehow.
Was that when Uruguay came into the picture?
It kind of, there was a very strange thing. And I don't know if you've been through anything like this, but having spoken to people who have been sort of up against the brink of, very serious malaises or sicknesses or even near death. It also happened, I lost my mother, very suddenly. So it was a culmination of things where it was almost like there was a blank canvas in front of me, a completely blank canvas. While I was navigating the mire of getting to the other side of the autoimmune situation, I was somehow, I remember I started working with horses. There was an incredible woman who was working with a very specific type of natural horsemanship called somatic equine therapy. And all I knew is I just wanted to go and spend time and reconnect with horses. I didn't really understand exactly what it was going to bring back to me. But the work that I had been doing with horses as a kid was very standard: getting on a horse, subjugation, putting a piece of metal in a horse's mouth and a saddle on his back, and off you go. This was actually becoming part of the herd. And in doing this work, what actually happens is that you naturally have to drop all of your bullshit. You have to drop your ego. You have to drop your defenses. If you are to join up and become part of the herd, you have to mimic the lead mare. In mimicking the lead mare, you then possess the innate qualities of being consistent, honest, truthful, loving, And that's sort of those qualities on repeat.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the horses demand of you. It's got nothing to do with getting on the back of a horse. It's actually about becoming part of the herd. And the healing that takes place when you allow yourself to be in that space is astronomical. It's different for each person, but basically it brings you back to your North Pole. It completely redirects you to your center. And when it puts you in that center, the only place that you can live in is your truth. It's undeniable. It's actually the only way I can describe it, because I've done ayahuasca once and I did it in this time period, is that it takes you back home. It reminds you of your full connection. What, with ayahuasca?
Yeah, there's usually like I don't know if everyone has this, but like there's a purge that happened, right?
Yeah.
Throw up and
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, you have to. It's part of the deal. Yeah. It's part of the deal. The purging is letting go of what you're holding on to. So I'm not a big, my pom-poms are not out for that. I've been offered many times to do ayahuasca in the past, and I don't abuse that medicine in any way, shape, or form. And I don't promote that anyone just goes out and does it, because I think that, this is also another layer to this, but I think that the movement of New Age spiritual narcissism and all the New Age spiritual kind of casualties that have gone so full on into this shamanic world of healing, tea ceremonies, sound bathing, high priestess, is also narcissism in its highest order. So it's ego dressed up in sort of pretty dresses, and you know the deal. I don't need to tell you. And it is what it is. But I do think it's a distraction, and I do think it's dangerous, because I think the medicine is there and is an incredible tool when it's held in complete respect, from where it came from, with the shaman. But that's another trip. But it's very rife in California. It's part of a movement that I also think needs balancing out, because I think it's very distracting. So I did take part in it once, because it was the right time, and it was the right time. But ultimately, the point is that between the horses and that, it put me in such a place of remembering. It was like Dorothy had flown away, and I was not in Kansas anymore. And then all of a sudden, it was like, this is Kansas.
Yeah.
And the Kansas was in me, but then it was a case of it was like being sort of like a 3-year-old who needed to start again. And I completely emptied myself, and I ended up, through a friend of a friend, embarking upon a journey in Patagonia, and I entered a 60-kilometer endurance race on a horse.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And
how's that?
I mean, it's outrageously nuts, because it's just not what you do if you don't do. And here, I am not an endurance, racer, and I'm not a fan of sports and horses, It's not my jam.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I was being cool to do it. And so I don't know if you've ever had those times in your life where you just keep on saying yes. So it was just green.
Most of my life.
Most of your life? I don't know. I was just kept on saying yes. And so I ended up, and it was the bottom of the world. It's Torre del Paine. It's one of the most beautiful. Have you been there?
Yeah.
So it's literally laughably beautiful. I mean, it's so spectacular. You have no doubt that whoever created this incredible place, I think, sprinkled the last of her magic down there, because it's otherworldly. So yes, I was galloping on a horse, and my back went out, and I had experienced a terrible injury down there, and I ended up getting off the horse, and I had this very profound conversation with the horse in the middle of these glaciers and these huge, very famous mountains. And there was a photographer who took the picture in the bushes, ironically. And at that particular moment, I got this download from this horse, and I think this is where I lose some people, but I really don't care. But I got a very, very, very strong kind of, not angry, but a fairly pissed off message from this horse, which was, you humans are such a bunch of arrogant sods, I don't know. I don't know who you think you are. You get on my back. You want me to get you across the finishing line safely. I'm going with the herd lady. Quite frankly, fuck you. And I was like, I get it. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
You know, this is like a one night stand. I've basically commandeered your back, and I'm doing what I want with you because I'm controlling you through subjugation, fear, and pain.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a promise to that horse that I would create a space where humans could come and learn from horses. And
that's your sanctuary. That's the horse sanctuary that you started.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I ended up there finally, but that was through a journey. I then ended up going to Kenya because of my back injury. I met someone in Argentina who did work in Kenya. Then I flew to Kenya and I set up a school in Kenya with permaculture. So there's a school up and running there that works with the local Maasai community. So I got to learn well, it was a very important part of the deal because this is where I learned about community and how you work with different cultures and how important it is to abandon any desire to have any white savior complex bullshit, of which there is far too much of.
So much, plenty, too much.
It's actually not only is it counterproductive, it's destructive. It's really malignant. And it was a process that I had to really, and with what I do with the horses in Uruguay, is I have to check myself and my own ego, like who's in the driver's seat, who's driving this? Why am I doing it? And most of the time I've been able to step back and just put people in place. So local Kenyans, Maasai, give them the land, give them the project, and make sure that they're the ones running it, and then get the fuck out. I mean, when I say that, I mean stand back from the sidelines and get your Mzungu face out of it, because if they see your face, it's like kryptonite. Mm-hmm. It takes away the power, So ultimately, I knew that I didn't want to, and I couldn't live in Africa for various different reasons. It's quite dangerous, but because I'd been spending this time in Patagonia. I was flying back from Africa, and this is where there's an odd turn of events.
Okay.
I was flying back from Africa, and I was going back into Los Angeles, where I lived in Venice Beach for 18 years, and I was denied access to getting back in the country.
Into work? Into the U.S.?
Yeah, into the U.S. They said, you're not coming back in. We'll let you know in 6 to 8 months what we decide.
Were you not a citizen?
No, I'm not a citizen. No.
Okay.
No, I'm not a citizen on account of a couple of things, but it revolves around my last name. So my last name is an Indian name, it's a Hindu name, but in Persia and Iran, it's a Muslim name.
So wait, so that was the issue?
That's what we're guessing. Yeah, that's what we're guessing. That's speculation, because it was the day after the attacks in the nightclub in Paris, and so yeah. So I didn't have anywhere to go.
Okay.
And so I went to a very, very spiritual place in Somerset in England called Glastonbury. And it's got these incredibly powerful ley lines. Mm-hmm. And I sat there and I sort of held my head to the sky and I said, okay, universe, you want to tell me what this is about, because I've got 2 suitcases to my name. I can't get to my home. It means I can't work. I don't have my job. I mean, everything's been denied to me.
Yeah.
And I met a shaman called Kestrel, as you do.
Yeah, as you do in Glastonbury.
And Kestrel said to me, you are going to go and be the steward of a piece of land where people are going to come and heal. So I was like, all right, Kestrel. So I bought a one-way ticket to Buenos Aires. I got an Airbnb for $50 a night. I went to Spanish school for 2 weeks. And I knew enough about the politics to realize that Argentina was unstable. And I couldn't put my money into being in Patagonia because I would never get it out. And so I called up a real estate agent in Uruguay and I said, I want a piece of land. It has to have running water, a little casita with some basic electricity so I can fly in my pit bulls, my rescue pit bulls. And that's the criteria. Okay. I need to be able to grow my own food and have my own water, and then I'll be good to go. this is going to be the place where I'm going to build a sanctuary. This is where I'm going to fulfill my promise to that horse.
Wow.
And I pulled the trigger, I pressed it, and I pressed eject. And I was 40 years old. I had 2 bags on my hands, and I was wearing my Converse and my onesie, and I literally felt like a 16-year-old starting my life again. And that was the beginning of the next juncture of basically what has been now, I suppose, my life's vocation since then.
Wow, it's a lot to unpack. I don't know. I have like 30 different things in my mind racing at the same time. I actually saw you on a show. What was that show called? Ride with Norman Reedus, I believe. And you're galloping. You look like you're like one of those gauchos, like the South American cowboys, and you're coming out to meet them. And you kind of look like that, like Lara Croft, but like on a horse. And you just looked very fit, and like you looked like you belonged. You are of the land.
Oh, thanks. I think.
No, why? That's not. It's a compliment.
Well,
you adjusted very well there. I mean, it just looks like you were happy. Just looked like you are where you should be. Even if it was for only, I think the whole bit was like 3 minutes, right?
Yeah. It looks. Well, also I'm seeing my.
Well, I mean, also on social media, I see it, and on social media, I didn't even know where it was initially. I didn't know what country it was. It looked like paradise. I mean, you're out there on horses, you're, along the shoreline and eating all these fresh vegetables and with your dogs. I mean, for me, I guess everyone's definition of paradise is different. Some people want a chocolate mint on their pillow at night, and they want to be in the fanciest hotels and, rub shoulders with the elite. And for other people, it's away in the mountains in a cabin with animals and a few loved ones. So, I mean, again, definition of paradise is different. But for me, looking at it, it looks amazing.
Yeah, it looks amazing.
I'm sure it's not easy.
That's an understatement.
But nothing good is easy, right? Like if you have everything handed to you and everything's easy, you kind of don't appreciate it.
Look, there's a rite of passage to everything, and you're right. Nothing comes for free, and I mean that's all part of the journey. The tests that I have been put through in, and there's going to be a lot of people who don't know what you're talking about, that because they don't maybe follow me on Instagram.
They should follow her on Instagram, guys.
Well, I'm a mixed bag. But ultimately, being a woman who has gone and I built a house alone, and it's 400 acres that I took on.
Wow! And
it's a completely wild ecosystem with a myriad of incredible species that I am the protector of, because there are hunters and lots of people who are after the skins of various different animals that live on my. I feel very odd calling it my property, but she is under my watch, I suppose. But it was a completely bloody insane thing to do, let me tell you, because this is me. It was a very knee jerk or sort of reactionary sort of response, because it definitely had a bit of a kind of fuck you to it. There was a lot of trauma betrayal response to why I did it. I felt very abandoned by, a country that I felt that I had been good to, paid taxes, towards. And listen, I'm not sucking my thumb over it, because everybody goes through this, every day, here are families, especially South Americans. But this is, this thing about, the treatment towards minorities, this happens to everybody. But like I said, I'm not sucking my thumb. It's a cross I have to bear, but it was a big one. Your life denied to you in all its entirety is a big frigging curveball.
Yeah.
But then my response was, fine, fuck you, I can do it on my own, which is a dangerous response. But that piss and vinegar is a fuel that will get you bloody far. But what I wasn't prepared for was a very, 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 very misogynistic culture who
In Uruguay.
South America in general. But yes, yeah. I mean, they're lovely people, but everywhere's lovely until you get involved with plumbers and contractors and and all of that. But out the gate, I was robbed on the price of the property, on every single thing I did. I spoke very basic Spanish. I was doing everything through Google Translate. I then found out that the closest town knew I was an actress, so they started spying on me. You've got Google, the navigation thing. So anyone who was working at my house would tell people that I was there. So I was robbed constantly. So I became, it was like a gilded cage that I built for myself in paradise. So the irony is, yes, it was absolutely beautiful, but I was being tormented throughout the process. I gave the land to, and this is where you have to be careful with manifestation. This word manifestation, which it just gets chucked about so willy-nilly, is that manifestation happens, for better and for worse. And you will get to where your mind's eye, tells you to, it wants to get to. So I had 400 acres with my own water supply, and it was literally littered with wild Arabians, unicorns, because that's what I saw in my mind's eye. The problem is the cocktail that got me there was fear, anger, betrayal, resentment. Did I say fear?
Look, you're in a completely different ecosystem. You're in a different country, different rules, different culture, different language. A lot of instability over the past few decades. And you're by yourself. Yeah, it's scary.
No, you have to understand, this is in the middle of bloody nowhere. My local town is like an hour, I have to go an hour and a half to go to the supermarket. So, and I was, completely on my own. Yeah. No family, no boyfriend, nothing. And, it was a big one, because I ended up in what I call the Hall of Mirrors, which is, there's a certain point where isolation, and this is where when people started talking about isolation and quarantine, I was like, you got no idea.
Yeah.
Try literally living on your own in the middle of nowhere where you have not one person to talk to, and on top of it, you're being robbed and threatened every day. It was like a really bad horror movie.
Sorry to interrupt you. I just want to piggyback on something you're saying. Was there a point where you're like, what did I get myself into? Like, I already bought every day. Still?
No, I mean, it was 5 years of what the fuck have I done? Sorry, I don't know if I swear, but I put all of my eggs in that basket. And then it was, a financial thing. I ended up having to sell my house in the States to keep on and keep up with what the costs were, which kept on amounting and amounting. But I'd got in too deep. I'd got in too deep, and I had made this commitment, and I had animals on the land, and then you're then mother to a whole different equation. And it meant that this other life, which was my acting career, had to get completely put on hold. So, agents dropped me, I stopped working, and my full commitment to what I was doing had to be embraced in a very different way. But, there were layers to this, which was so traumatizing, if I'm really honest with you, and so terrifying in a way where when you realize you've got no one to turn to say, can you help me? And you are literally with yourself and these huge animals, these are giant children who need you. And my knowledge of horses was okay, but nothing like what I needed to learn. And every single thing was taught from them. And ultimately what happened was I kind of reached a rock bottom, another rock bottom, I've scared myself to bejesus. Because ultimately I've created a thing that everyone waxes lyrical over. Everybody talks about this living.
Yep.
With your own, I have my own water supply. I planted my fruit trees. I planted my vegetable garden. I've got my chickens. I've got the horses. I am living apparently the dream. And like you said on
You're
Instagram,
self-sustained.
yeah, but it looks like paradise. Here's the issue. It doesn't work without community. It doesn't. It just doesn't. And so I had to go. I was able to do this major reset during COVID, where I decided to just completely change up my cocktail, change up my manifestation fluid, because I had to take responsibility for what I was calling in. And that's what I realized is I'm not a victim to this any more than, this is something that I've created. And yes, I'm either going to go down with it and drink myself to death or God knows what, or drown in that river, or I'm going to have to really go in and rechange and clean out the cylinders.
Yeah.
And literally put in an IV drip day by day and reselect my fuel by every thought, every word, every single moment. And the luxury of being able to be quiet and readdress and rechange that fuel tank for a serum, an essence that is now going to be the life essence of this next part of my journey is so, it's one of the raddest things that you can do, because this is the gift we have right now. This is what I really, really believe. And this is the reason why I think I'm really not great at talking about the Hollywood stuff. I understand why it had to happen. But for me, this is if I have anything to share with people, it's this, which is if we can take the time to clear out the old muck that was fueling our cylinders, like forget what the brain wants to do, forget what we want to do, like just shut that down, go back in and purely reset your tanks, dust off the compass, right? That's got really out of whack, and be patient enough to listen to what it is that the universe is actually putting you on course to do. Yeah, I made a promise to a horse, but that might not be my real calling. That might have been my ego's calling in that moment. So I was like, shit, I need to actually go deeper with this, and I need to clean myself out and be the purest instrument possible so I can listen to what my purpose is right now so I can be of service to the whole. Like what is required of me and my brothers and sisters so I can show up in this time where I know that we're going to need healing.
Yeah. It's so interesting listening to all this, because we're so divorced from reality, or we are living in a reality that's not reality. What I mean by that is I look at your feed and I look at the stories and the videos and I get so jealous. I'm like, wow, look at her life. She's on the horse. She's in the middle. She's living my dream, right? Like what I see myself doing maybe in 10 years from now. And then you, on the other hand, not now, but maybe in the beginning, scared, unhappy, a lot of self-doubt. What did I do? Is this the right decision? And there's just two things that are happening simultaneously. One is we're all putting up the best versions of our lives, right, for display. And that's not the reality a lot of times. And I'm not saying like that's specific. I'm not talking specifically about you, just generally, we're always putting up the best version of our lives on display. And on the flip side, we're looking at other people all the time, and we're thinking how unhappy we are, right? Like I could look at your life over there and say how amazing it looks. And you being so unhappy could be looking at someone over in, I don't know, Canada right now and saying, wow, look at her. She seems so happy. And it's this vicious cycle where we're unhappy with what we're doing, but we're all looking at other people thinking how happy they are. You know what I mean? It's a weird, I don't know, social media is kind of deformed reality in a way.
I think we know what's up. I think we know it's bullshit.
We do, but we don't. I mean, look at, for example, there's a generation of kids right now, ask them what they want to be. They want to be famous. They don't care what they're famous for. They don't care what they do. There's no end goal. The end goal is to be famous. There's no, you know what? I really want to be an amazing athlete, or I want to be a scientist or an engineer. I want to be famous. That is the end goal. So it's democratized fame. It's made it so much easier for everyone to be famous. I could start a YouTube channel, Instagram, Twitter, etc., and I can have millions of followers, and everyone will like me. And that is the goal for a lot of kids.
For some, yeah, it is.
A lot, yeah.
Yeah. For some, it definitely is. But on the other side, there's a lot of kids who are also saying, I definitely want to make sure that the world that I'm moving into is devoid of this shit that we've had to navigate, which is something that I don't wish for them, but I also think it's given them a drive and a purpose. I see a lot of friends, kids who have that mentality and that drive. So it's polarized. We're living in a very, 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 very polarized time. But I think that social media is incredibly dangerous to those influential minds, because I also think they think it's a quick meal ticket. And the problem with that is we're dealing with the most malignant addiction, which is validation addiction.
Yeah.
And so, look, this is something that I call myself out on regularly. I can look back and I know full blown when it's just I'm lonely me down in the bottom of the world and I'm like, I want a bit of love. I'm okay with that, because you know what? The thing is, we all blurb on about like, oh God, we're all just so, addicted to this and that. Like, yeah, we are. We're all addicted. There's no room that is for NA, nay, AA. Everybody's in the fucking room. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. We're all in the room. And the baseline, this is it. And this is why I absolutely, for me, the work of Gabor Mate, I don't know if you know him. He's the badass of all. He works and does some of the most important work with addiction, in and around addiction. But the base of that, as you know, is or not, I don't know, is trauma. And so, I think that what we're seeing is that whether it's I want to be this person, or I want to have fame, or I want to be something other than what I am not, is all just an expression of pain. It's all just an expression of trauma. Because ultimately, if we were not in pain, we wouldn't be looking for a drug or a different identity or to be validated through social media. We'd be whole. And so when people are talking about what is the goal in life, what are we striving for? It's not happiness, it's wholeness. Mm-hmm. It's actually wholeness. And why are we so empty? It's because we're disconnected. So why are we disconnected? Well, we know all the reasons. So what is it that we need to give back to children? What is it? First of all, I think we need to give platforms for a different kind of hero. I think that influencers, Kardashians and whoever, I'm not into slamming anybody, but unfortunately they've eclipsed the moment. It's now we have a moment to celebrate and put people on pedestals who are actually doing the work, who actually can be there to say, hey, this way. And not only is it cool, but it's the way forward. It's empowering, it's intoxicating. And also you get a buzz off it. Doing good and spreading good work and working on good work, is infectious. It lights up the same stuff. It's as intoxicating. It's just not available. Yeah. It's not it's not available en masse. And so, it's interesting that you bring this up, because I think that social media is one of the most dangerous playing grounds in the world. I think it's
good and bad. Yeah.
It's dangerous. It's very dangerous. And I think how we use it, and I think the way you use it, thank you, for, sharing, integral, intelligent people, who have inspiring stuff to share. The thing is that how do you get that out to audiences en masse? And I think that's the ultimate thing, is like, how do we not just preach to the choir? Yeah. How do we affect these younger people? But I think this is where it has to go. This is where it has to become a bigger conversation. And so the work that I'm now trying to hopefully do, as I'm, the knowledge that I've learned and gleaned from sort of being out of the loop for the last 5 years, and as far as like whatever the acting world is to take the relationships that I've had and integrate messaging through docuseries and even scripted dramas that can affect and infect people, and it's through celebrating the work of people who do incredible work with trauma rehabilitation, number one. And the other one is making scripted content in and around what it means to give a place to this next generation coming up who need to be heard, who need to be recognized, and who need to be shown a different way. And so I think if we capitalize on this moment to use these platforms, these media platforms to redirect the messaging and to nurture them and send out nourishing content and highlight a different directive, I personally feel that's a responsibility.
Yeah.
I feel a personal responsibility. I'm not living hand to mouth. You're not living hand to mouth. I have a vehicle that I have been part of and been using for the last 30 years of my life. Now I have a moment where I can figure out how can I interweave some good stuff back into that, and that all comes from life experience. It comes from my own journey. It comes from not being ashamed of it, understanding my own dysmorphia within that world. Dysmorphia is rife.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing, so much of especially through young girls in social media. And, I feel that as a woman, what am I putting out there as a woman? How am I aging and how am I sharing that fallibility gracefully?
Very gracefully. I mean, like I said, your social media is net positive. I think it's a much better message than than the majority of what's out there. It's just, for me, that's paradise. Like, for me, that's how I see myself once I'm established to the point where, whatever I see in my head, that's, and again, not necessarily how I don't know if I want to live off the grid completely, but I do want that to be a part of my life in some way, shape, or form. I do want to be able to be in nature. But like you said, I think community is a big one. Being lonely becomes very, very old, very fast. Is that something now you're focusing on more, like building that community down there and building it? And we talked prior to recording. You mentioned that you want to start a rehabilitation center down there. So is that your focus now?
Yeah. I mean, it's that was always the original vision, was to hold a space specifically for the horses. But I needed to learn some shit.
Yeah.
She had some things she needed to tell me, and I had to go the land.
The land. Okay.
Yeah. She's like she's my mom, like big time. I hit these walls, and I stand there sometimes just with tears coming down my face, going, "What?" Just, and she reminds me, it's this weird little nudge I get up the backside. It's almost like a horse's nuzzle that pushes me forward and pushes me forward, and I got to keep on going. But this last 6 months, something really beautiful dropped in for me, which was just in the nick of time. And because I listened to her, she told me she was ready to be, that she needed spaces clearing. There's a lot of like weeds and jungle. No one tells you when you own land that it's a relationship. Like, it's a full blown relationship. You don't tell it what you're doing. She tells you what her story is, and you listen to her. That's the journey. I'm literally in reverence to her and her creatures and her flowers and her medicine. It's next level intelligence. It's full blown. So that's a process, because she has 4 seasons. So you have to wait that out. Then you have to wait out your neighbors, how they behave with you. Then you have to see how different animals live at different times of the year. So it's been 5 years of learning this. And finally she said, listen, I need these spaces cleared because there were too many weeds and the grass needs to grow. And she said, and then it was like, then the animals will come. And literally as I did that, as I listened to her, I was connected with a local sanctuary who rescue horses from the slaughterhouses. And it's actually a Tibetan monk
Really?
who runs the organization.
Okay.
And his belief is that every animal is a version of our mother. And so his duty in this incarnation is to rescue animals from suffering. And so my part is that I offer the land and basic care, and I'm the kind of mama, nana, and it's this beautiful situation so far where, I get to sort of take care of 21 animals who either, otherwise would have had the most horrific life.
Mostly horses?
Those are all horses. I already had 6 that I've already been working on with rehabilitation, doing the somatic work that I've been talking to you about. So, simultaneously healing myself while actually, healing them. They were 4 horses that had been really badly abused. Then one of them had a baby.
Wow.
And they're my other teachers. So I've been with them, learning from them for the last few years. And those are the ones you'll see in the video that I sleep with and that I lie with, and they let me kind of hug them like kittens. And that's a relationship that's earned. That's a lot of time and love.
How do the dogs get along with the horses?
Yeah, my rescue pit bulls or the rescue.
Yeah, the pits. Because I have a pit bull too, and like she gets along with everyone. But I know every dog's different.
No, yeah, my boy who's like full ghetto pit bull. Everyone's an enemy until proven otherwise.
Yeah.
He was a foster fail. He was like, I'm going to get these furry tractors are, mama. And I was like, okay, geez, this is going to be a problem. We've worked it out. It's all good. The only things that don't exist with him are there's no cats happening in his world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough. He's still a dog.
Well, I got him too late in the game, and this is the other thing: is if with pit bulls, people don't understand that you really have to be alpha to their situation. They need a North Pole, so they also are my teachers. Pit bulls to me are next level because you got to show
dogs.
up. Yeah, they are the most sensitive, the most sweet, the most gentle. But if you haven't had them since they're a baby, you got to watch it. You do.
Yeah.
And I feel strongly about that with pit bull rescues too. I bless them, but I really feel that you got to be careful who the owner is. You really got to know that you could have potential situations if the dog hasn't been socialized. So the story.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Pit bulls. I mean, I've had so many like pit bull quote unquote experts or people that have been around pit bulls and handle pit bulls their whole lives on the podcast. So that's like a whole podcast around only pit bulls. But I don't know. Overall, my experiences. So I don't know if you remember. There was a few years ago. There was Mike Vick, the football player, and he got caught for essentially he had a dog fighting ring, and he did some horrendous things to pit bulls and killed them. I'm not going to go into it, but horrific things. Some of the dogs that were he went to jail for like a very short amount of time. I think he paid a fine. Now he's back in the NFL making millions of dollars. So I don't think justice was served in that instance. But the dogs that were rescued from there, some were not able to be fostered out to families, but some actually ended up being in families with kids. So even like dogs that have seen the absolute worst were still, able to rehabilitate themselves or with the help, obviously, of humans and integrate back into like a loving, warm family. Yeah.
Well, this is where humans and animals are completely alike.
Yeah.
And this is ultimately, if you talk about where the next leg of this journey is, it's actually into that mutual rehabilitation, reintegration back into lives that they have taught me that I'm not going to say 100% because actually that's not true. Not every dog is you can rehabilitate as the same as not can you can't every human.
True.
And a lot of the work that I have been doing now. So for the last 2 years, I've been studying trauma, abuse, and its ramifications. And so whether it be psychopath or sociopathy or narcissism or whatever it is in humans, and with animals it will be something similar. Why does a pit bull suddenly turn around out of nowhere and kill a baby? Why does it will be trauma at some point in its life. And so the culmination of everything that's come about has actually put me in a place where I'm now in contact with incredible people who are doing like extraordinary work with inmates in high security prisons. There's an amazing woman called Fritzi Horstman who I was just talking to, who's done a project called the Compassion Prison Project. So I've been talking to her about potentially doing something with horses, with inmates. Another friend of mine who did a film called The Mustang, Matthias Schoenhartz. Well, that was a whole story about a Mustang and an inmate. I don't know if you saw that.
No.
But this is about how we heal each other. This is this moment. And the work that I'm doing within the actual sanctuary will be a sort of a base camp for that. Because I think that for me, myself, I would like to have a place where I can, on a microcosm, like learn and share that with other people. It's not going to change the world, but that's something that I would very like to be able to share with people on whatever level. But why I'm back in this part of the world right now is I'm talking to production companies about shooting docuseries, highlighting the work that people actually are doing with animals to rehabilitate. It rehabilitates the animal and it rehabilitates the human.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's not bulletproof. It's not 100% effective.
No, but nothing is.
It's a bloody good start. And you know what? We are manufacturing sociopaths and psychopaths in the same way that if you breed pit bulls to fight, they will fight and they will be genetically predisposed potentially.
Yep.
It's the same with humans. There's no difference. But animals have the ability to expedite the healing. And I just feel that as much of that can get around as possible.
Yeah.
I think we have a greater opportunity as humans to heal. And I think that's what we're supposed to be doing now. I don't know what else we're supposed to be doing now. Do you really think we're supposed to be pressing reset and getting back into nightclubs and just getting our boogie on again? Yeah, sure. We need to dance. That's amazing. It's essential. Yeah. But like, hang on a minute. We took off the scab. What's the actual root of this pain and this open wound?
Yeah. It's a good, I mean, I think being, like you said, like you maybe had it in Uruguay by yourself, going, being introspective and peeling off the layers. For other people, it's been maybe just being, by themselves, not being able to go see their grandmother or their parents. And I think I've personally seen a lot of change in a lot of people around me, prioritizing family, prioritizing connections that before maybe you didn't really prioritize as much because there's life, there's all these things, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, tomorrow's not promised. Maybe I should put a little bit more emphasis on these relationships with people that I really care about. And I don't think that was a priority 2 years ago.
No, absolutely. I just heard. Long may it last.
Well, that's the problem, right? We always I've had a few things over the past few years that I've personally seen where someone's life just changed just like that. And for those few days afterwards, I was deeply impacted. I was like, okay, shit, gotta live the moment, gotta embrace what you have. And then, a week or 2 or 3 later, you kind of roll back into life and you forget about it. I think that's the tough part, right? Like remembering that on a daily basis.
That's why you got to reset. That's why I'm saying you got to go in and change the fuel tanks. And our default setting is too hardwired. Mm-hmm. We will revert back like a rubber band. And so, you hear this being bandied about a lot, the term, the work, this work. And there is work to be done. It's just, what does it look like? and Rome wasn't built in a day. And for each person, it's very different. But I think that for a lasting and affecting change, even if it's just simply, like you said, recognizing what a blessing it is to be able to be connected to people you love and see them and hug them and touch them and share with them and eat food with them and dance with them, that'll go back into being taken for granted again very, very, very bloody quickly.
For sure.
So when you do a reset, it's like when you do a cleanse, I guess, if you've ever done one of those.
Yeah, they wasn't pleasant.
Yeah, but what happens is naturally your body says, I don't want to eat that anymore. It gets psyched about the broccoli, What happens is when you do a reset, you get psyched about, it's like, it's cause and effect. It's quantum physics. It's like, what used to get me kind of, excited or fueled was, whatever this stuff was. If it was going to the club, it was doing an 8-ball, it was like getting that bigger paycheck, getting that bigger job, getting that accolade, getting that Golden Globe, getting that whatever the thing is that's, up the ladder of success, as we used to call it. That's dissolved for a lot of people. And I think that's really healthy. What a lot of people are going to have to endure uncomfortably is now what? And this is where I think it's really important to find as many people. And this is where I say that we're all like kids in the sandbox, kind of wearing diapers going, it's okay. We kind of shat ourselves and it's messy. and you can come and get in the sandbox and build some sandcastles for a while until you figure it out, because the natural thing is to go back to what the rest of the tribe was doing. I just felt it in New York. I was there and it was amazing. It was gay pride and everyone was like doing the thing and, getting back to that. And it was a celebration, but ultimately, that's not, I can't do the hedonism anymore. I can't do the drinking and it's like, for me, like being crystal and light and like full of like the good stuff is what I want to be around. That's my high. That's my drug of choice.
Yep.
And then finding other people who are like, it's cool. You're cool. I've got you. You're safe. You can be here with me and you can be awkward. Yep. Like, is it okay just to stumble and fumble around somebody right now? Yeah, I got you. Is it okay that I don't know? Yes. Please tell me you don't know. That's frigging beautiful. Yes. Because guess what? We don't. Yeah. None of us have a fucking clue. And that is perfect. So who does? Nature does. The animals do, higher power. I mean, I know that gets overused, but there is something bigger than us, defer to her, defer to it, find it, because we ourselves, if we revert to, or we defer to systems, governments or whatever, where we're going to go. This is about us actually sort of listening to ourselves, listening to each other, and also finding teachers within our natural world, within our brothers and sisters, within the viruses, within the bacteria, within the fungi, within the animals, within the butterflies. Those are our teachers. We just need to stop and clear ourselves out and listen. And you know what happens after that? You get shown where you need to go. You don't even need to think about it. Shit starts showing up. People start showing up. Literally, people start getting put in front of your path and put you on the direction you're supposed to be in. And I truly believe that, because that's what started happening for me, and I've seen it for so many other people. I'm just a slight beat ahead of the curve. There are people who are way more ahead of the curve than me, but at the moment, I'm just one of the little orphans in the orphanage, putting my hand out to some other kids in the orphanage saying, I got you. You want to talk about it, you want to cry about it, you want to bleed over it, it's all good. You're safe. And I think that's what we want to feel safe right now, is safe in the discomfort of it.
I feel like that was a beautifully put, perfect end speech to this movie. That you just summarized it beautifully, the whole thing now. That was magic. That was great. Rhona, this was a lot of fun. I know, I told you it's an hour. We ended up doing 2 hours. I feel like we could have done 3 hours easily.
Yeah, it's a good thing because I got to go on a potty break.
Oh, just in time. Well, again, this was a lot of fun. I really appreciate you, being so candid, being so honest. It's been really insightful, and I love talking to you.
No, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for being curious. I definitely had to sort of check my own, what am I doing on this one? What's because I keep quite a lot of things to do with my own personal, if I'm not talking about a project in particular. But I hope that people just feel like it's okay, and that there are other kids out there going through the mess, and that there's another way. And so thank you for giving me a moment to share my messy little journey, and to share some of the imperfections that go with it. Because yeah, the horses are pretty, but there's still a little, messy human who's stumbling through it. And it's important to know that that's real and that's raw and it's part of the journey. So thanks for giving me an opportunity to share that.
Yeah, happy to. And I feel like you gave even myself a healthy dose of reality, which I think we all need sometimes. So thank you for that. And where, obviously Instagram, but other places people, can find you, or is there anything, you want to plug?
I am actually going to set up a specific page, because so many people have asked me now, and I feel like 5 years in, it's about time. I'm gonna set up a specific page for the sanctuary,
Okay.
because people want to get involved and hear more about it and what's happening with the horses, and if they can be involved. And then the journey as it unfolds, because I'll be holding spaces like mini retreats, starting with. I think I'm going to start with teenage children who are suffering addiction and abuse, and hold spaces and sort of retreats, I suppose, where people can come and check in and remember and get some love and heal a bit. So
Yeah.
I'll be down the road a bit for sure, but yes, if they want to follow me on Instagram, I'll be setting that up soon. So that's coming down the road.
All right. Awesome. Well, guys, go follow Rhona. Her Instagram page is pretty amazing. And again, Rhona, thank you so much. This was awesome.
Thank you so much, Roy. It was lovely to meet you, and thank you for chatting.
Yeah, thanks so much. Take care.
Okay, lots of love.